Happy Wednesday, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're at. Welcome to another live stream from a woman to a leader, and I'm very excited to have Kelly Edmondson here with me. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good day. How's
Yeah,
that?
yeah. And so, Kelly, we are going to talk about something that I don't think is talked enough. How to handle grief and loss, and both of us experienced losing loved ones. You lost your son, and I lost my brother. And you told me when we talked that, and also it's part. I'll be happy that you share, what you do today. And you told me people don't know how to approach people that are grieving. Why don't we start with your mission and your company?
Yeah.
So you started, after losing your son, you started a company called Timely Presence. So
Yes.
share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, grief is really a universal human experience, right? We all lose something. The ultimate of that is loss of a loved one's life, but we experience grief throughout our life in varying ways. And one of the things that I experienced with the ultimate loss of my son was that, we generally, people love to show up and support people in their toughest moments, and they do that. And I experienced that also. I was surrounded by support. But people go back to living because they're alive, and that's a part of what we do. And grief really comes much later. So the notification is shock, it's pain, it's sadness. But grief is really the psychological recognition, even the physical recognition that someone is really absent from your life. It's the change, it's the new future, the new normal. And so I spent much of the grieving period where I realized I couldn't pick up the phone and call my son. We wouldn't have any more birthdays or Mother's Days or events together. He wouldn't have children. I wouldn't meet a daughter-in-law. All of those things came later. And everyone was gone. Not because they didn't care, but because our support is timed to the wrong moment. It's all up front. There's nothing that goes on. And so my son and I decided to build a business that shows up when research says people are most likely to have grief intensification. And so that is that first birthday, that first Mother's Day for someone like me, or your first wedding anniversary if it's your spouse, the first Christmas season when they're not sitting across the table from you. And so we built a grief gifting service that doesn't just show up when everyone's there, when the loss is fresh and you're learning to navigate that, but all year long. We deliver gifts all year long on an emotional calendar that just show up and say, we haven't forgotten you or your loved one. They matter, and you're not alone. And so it was based on my experience. It's growing tentacles because what we've also learned is, in particular, workplaces need to be more grief competent. People come back to work different than they left after a loss. And so we're trying to help organizations and leaders understand, how do you work with someone and help them in their new normal? How do you support them so they can be the best employee and they can be present, right? People are at most risk of leaving a job after an acute loss. And so how do we help employers show up better for them? And so we're just trying to make a difference through something that, as a nurse, I've seen on the front end. As a grief counselor, I've now worked with people in, but as a mother, I lived through.
Yeah, and I think what I realized is, first, people are not comfortable talking about it or approaching the subject. So a lot of times I notice when I mention it, Like, oh, my brother used to love this place, whatever. Like when I mention this to people, they feel very uncomfortable with the situation, and it's not because they are not supportive, excuse me, but they just don't know how to approach grief.
So true. It's so true. They're afraid even that if they bring it up, they're going to remind you, right? They'll remind you that you lost your brother, as though there's a day that you could possibly forget that, right? You remember the pain of the call. You remember what your parents needed to live through during that, right? All of those things aren't something that someone can recall to your memory. They're things that you've processed and integrated into your life, and it's a part of the way you operate now, right? I always call tears kind of wet footprints of love. That's what they are. And so I may tear up if someone brings back a memory and I think about it, but it's really those are wet footprints of love. And I love to hear my son's name. I love to hear stories about him. And having emotion about something doesn't make it bad. It makes it meaningful.
Yeah, I think people in general don't feel comfortable around tears. When people tears up, they it doesn't make them feel comfortable. I just had a conversation with my daughter, so not related to specifically to grief, but sometimes we do tear up because emotions come up, and I hear her apologize. Oh, I'm sorry, I burdened you. I said, no, that's okay, because tearing up or showing emotions or having those moments is natural.
That's right.
And I want to
It's
encourage everyone to
That's right.
not to try to bury emotions.
That's right.
That's
That's
not
right.
healthy. And Kelly, when we talked about in the pre-call, you said something like, grief is not just about death. So can you share your point of view about grief in general? And then we can touch base about how can people handle that and how can companies handle that?
Yeah. I think it's so important. Grief is really a loss of a vision that you had for the future. That's really what that looks like. And so, I think the thing that's probably the most common is the loss of a relationship, a divorce, a significant friendship that has ended poorly, those things. I think we underestimate how impactful those things are for you. It's what you envisioned for the future. I am divorced. I'm remarried, but I am divorced. And I remember going through that process. When you stand at an altar, you in your mind have envisioned that you and this right? I'm going to be here on my wedding day, and on my death day, you and I will still be together. And my whole life changed with the decision that we weren't going to be together. And there is a process of moving forward with that. There are decisions that have to be made. There's rituals very much like there are after a funeral. Who gets what keepsake? Who gets what belonging? How you're going to move forward. All of those things are losses. The loss of a job, we certainly here in the States, there's been some economic uncertainty. And so there's been a job market that can be unsteady. The loss of a job or a role certainly reframes your identity. So much of what we do is built into our careers. That's how we show up in the world. And when you suddenly are laid off or lose an opportunity, it resets you, and your uncertainty is where you're living. And so much of grief is around uncertainty. I'm not sure how my new life looks, right? I had it all planned out. We love to plan things out, even though we know that we are not the authors. We love to plan things out. And so the loss of jobs. As a nurse, I have seen so much loss of physical capability. You see people who have had strokes or massive medical conditions that have changed the way they can function and show up in the world. And the one that I think for me has probably been the most difficult to watch people with is caregivers who have aging parents or a spouse who is losing mental cognition or physical capability, and you're losing, that relationship the way that it was,
Yeah.
and the future that you had envisioned. So we experience lots of loss throughout our lives, and outside of death, we're pretty comfortable talking about them, right? People are pretty comfortable saying, I lost my job, right? You see LinkedIn posts where people are saying, listen, I'm looking for support. If you know someone, there's an opportunity out there. If you can connect me with someone, anyone in your network who can help me rewrite a resume, right? We do that. With relationships, we love to step in and say, oh, I know the perfect guy for you. We're great for that. But for the most significant loss, we really do step back. And if you think about how much you've needed support through life transitions, that certainly doesn't change when you've had the ultimate loss. And so if we rethink and reframe grief as a more complicated loss of identity, loss of future vision, and how we've wanted to be carried through those moments, I think we can push through the discomfort and offer someone support right when they need it.
Yeah, and before we go into support, I want to touch on something you mentioned. I think it's interesting and related both to losing someone or losing a job or losing ability or whatever. There is a tendency that I've seen that people expect you to move on. Move on would mean, okay, if you lost someone, then life goes on. Move on. If you lost a job, okay, you should move on. You should find a new job. If you lost a spouse or you're divorced, you should move on. You should find a partner. And I think there's a big misunderstanding that there is time also to process that grief. And I as a grieving sister, I mean, my brother passed away a year ago, and that will always go with me. And it will never stop. But this thing of moving on is something that bothers me a lot, because what if I need that time, that space, to be there, to process that loss? And again, it doesn't have to be losing a person. It can be losing even something like a job. What if I don't need to move on right away? What is your take on that, Kelly?
I love that question. I too hate the phrase move on. I hate it because in reality, we move through, right? I am moving, you move through the loss of your brother. And what that means is it exists. My son, his life surrounds me and I want it to, right? I have his images. I still play his favorite songs. We still talk about his stories. I'm not leaving those behind. It's an integral part of who I am, what brings me joy to life. The love hasn't lost, right? We have this misconception that the love ends when the life does. Well, that's nonsensical, right? Love lives on. And so I carry his memory and his stories and all of those things with me. And so I am moving through my grief. And what that means to me is that I am carrying the love, remembrance, stories. I'm doing some meaning making around what Darius brought to my life, how he changed who I am as a person, as a mother, as a woman, as a leader. And that influences my life forward. And so it's disrespectful, I think, not intentionally, but it's disrespectful to the memory and the love and the life that existed to ask people to leave that behind. All of us want to be remembered. We all want legacy, right? Every one of us expects that whatever your years are on the end of the dash, that the dash isn't all that you get. That your life, your legacy, your memories live on, and the people that you've impacted and touched. And we feel the same way about the people that we lost. I'm carrying him with me into everything I do. And I am a better person. I have a different purpose. But I am better because Darius was a part of my life. And I'm taking that forward with me. That is my commitment to him. He lived 28 years. What a gift. Many mothers don't get that. Many mothers don't get that. I was able to have him 28 years.
Yeah.
But one day I looked up on a shelf and I have a bunch of mini urns so I can take him on trips with me. And I said, his life won't be reduced to mini urns. We're gonna move him and his legacy forward.
Yeah. And I'm sure, Darius, you carry him with you all the time.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
It doesn't go away. So what would be your take of people that surrounding those who grieve or those who lost something? How do they approach it? So you mentioned support. How do you support someone through that initial phase, and then kind of I see that as like some kind of transition, right? Period that is still processing it and then continuing carrying that loss forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's hard for people, and I know that, and they don't have the words, and so we built a framework. It's called the Presence Framework, and it's 8 pillars, but it's really based in 3 categories of activity, just 3, and I call them the 3 R's. And so the first one is to regulate, and this one was so important. When you have that loss, people have guttural reactions to it, right? I know the story of your brother. People have strong emotions, and before they support you, they have to gut check those emotions, right? You've got to be sure that you're careful with the words that you use, but also careful with the emotion. There were a number of times in acute grief when people approached me about Darius's loss, and I ended up consoling them in the conversation. That's not really the direction that should go.
Not how it should look like.
Right. So self-regulation and making sure that you are in a point where you can head on address the loss, that you can use words that are intentional and safe to engage in the conversation is important. So regulation is important, and people say that's the first step. It really is the first step, because your goal is not to add additional harm or pain. So regulate. Number 2 is to respond. And by that, it's do something. I continue to say this phrase. When everything quieted down and people went back to their daily activities, and I was in this new normal, the silence was deafening. Not hearing from people was the loudest noise that they could make, right? Do something, and something can be a text that says, I know today sucks, but you are not alone. It can be dinner's coming at 7. I'm picking the kids up for 3 hours on Saturday, right? I will come do laundry. I mean, something. And don't make the griever decide what that something is. They're overwhelmed. Decision making is very difficult. Just do something. Do something that adds value to their self-care and their ability to just be. So do something. So it's regulate, respond, and then the last one is remain. And what that means is do something more than one time, right? The grief goes on, and so put reminders on your calendar. Go back and look at an obituary and note the birthday. think about the holiday season and how emotional those can be already, and check in and just say, I know this is the first Christmas without, I know this is the first New Year without your brother. I'm thinking of you. Be intentional. Life gets busy, so as someone who cares about someone who's in pain, there's a little effort. You might have to put a reminder in your phone to call and check in on Limor. I think that that's okay. That's the right way to show up for someone. You have to build some structure into support. It's not organic. It's not accidental. Presence isn't accidental. It's intentional. And we do it because we care about our loved ones, our employees, the people who matter to us.
Yeah, and I guess I would tell our listeners, don't be, I know it can be intimidating approaching someone who lost, especially if they lost a loved one. But it's so meaningful when someone, so we just had the 1 year anniversary on Friday. So obviously it was a very difficult day. But just receiving a text message. So I received a text message a day before from someone, and she wrote me, I know tomorrow is going to be hard, sending you my love, my hugs. So that is so meaningful. So you don't need to do anything. Just remind someone that you think, as you mentioned, like you think about them.
That's right. And you remember, you love your brother, right? You love your brother. The message is, I love that, just thinking of you, but I heard the song come through today and thought about Darius. Those memories, those stories about how he brought meaning to other people's lives is, it's heartwarming. It's heartwarming, right? It's a great point.
Sure. And what would you say to employers? So you mentioned, Kelly, that companies and employers and managers don't really know how to support people in grief.
Yeah.
So what's your message here?
Yeah. We don't have a compassion issue. We have a policy problem. On average, people get 3.5 bereavement days after a loss. When you think logistically of what needs to happen to even get to a memorial service, right? The average time between death and memorial service is 9 days. So we've already extended this allotted leave time. So that's a problem, and it's very general. So the loss of a grandparent is allotted the same amount of time as the loss of a child. I think all of us understand the inequity in that. But beyond that, beyond this policy problem with the leave, when people return to work, leaders don't know how to address the elephant in the room. And often just don't. They don't have words. They haven't been trained with the words to say. They expect people to come back to full productivity.
Yeah.
The same schedule. The same recognition and celebrations. And, one of the things, I was so blessed by my employer when I lost my son. The way that my return was restructured, and I was granted the opportunity to send a memo before I returned to my colleagues. I was able to take the time off that I needed and lean into grief counseling and services, and able to take those appointments during work hours when I came back, as I needed to feel supported. But more importantly, when there was a day that was an emotional day, I was supported and maybe working remotely. or taking the day off because Mother's Day was approaching and I didn't know that I could come in that Friday before Mother's Day. I don't work on the anniversary of Darius's death, right? It's a very emotional day. Yeah. There's no need to explain it. That's just the rules that have been built into what I do. And so being intentional, my boss checked in routinely. Are you doing okay? Is there anything I need to reassign to someone else right now? With the loss of Darius, how are things with your other kids? Is there something that we need to change in your schedule, in your responsibilities for this time frame to allow you to do that? Those conversations are significantly important. And my experience has driven loyalty to my organization, appreciation, not just from me, but from my colleagues. Darius's father had a very different experience. Showed up to work. His first day back to work after Darius died was in 2 weeks, and he couldn't even complete the shift and was sent home for the rest of the day. And his commitment to that organization, the support he received from the organization is a polar opposite to what I received. And so it matters. It matters in how your employees stay. They're much more likely to leave an organization after an acute loss. They're much more likely to be absent, have tardiness and absenteeism and presenteeism. And they're certainly much less likely to be engaged. And there's ways for us to acknowledge the loss in the room, give them support through it, and see them through to the other side. Because most people find their way back to being able to be fully present at work. But it's a journey. It's not 3 days. It's not 5 days. And it's not 2 weeks.
It's definitely a journey, and it's a different journey for each person. Mm-hmm. And I also think, to be honest, that there is this society labels, like what's the level of loss.
That's right.
Based on like if it was your parent, your son, your sibling, your grandparents, but it's not measured that way.
That's right.
It's measured by how close you were to this person, That's how right. significant this person was in your life.
That's right. How significant they were, and also there's aspects of the relationship that matter, right? It's very interesting. I've met with many people on the grief journey now who have had very complicated relationships with people, and it's made grief very difficult for them. Unanswered questions, unresolved relationships, and so there's a lot of nuance to grieving. And as the definition of family has changed, I think it's also important to note that for some people, my best friend is like a sister, right? It's the closest person to me. And so a loss is quantified by the person who's experiencing it, not by your definition of it. It's a very important point and something that we should recognize.
Yeah. So I'm hearing from you, for employers, that it's a lot of empathy, checking in, giving space.
Saying the words.
What kind of words, for example?
Saying the name, right? And so actually saying, it's been a few months since Richard died, since you lost Richard. Is there anything that we should talk about? Or even tell me about Richard, right? We're going into Thanksgiving. I know it's going to be hard without him. Tell me your favorite memory about Richard at Thanksgiving. Those things offer someone the space to be able to share things that nobody else is asking. No one else is giving them the opportunity to share story. Story and remembrance is love. It's love. And so setting time aside in a private place to be able to recall those things, it matters so very much. And so Using the name, using the words. Life is different. I know that this holiday season, this football season, this, whatever's important about them, or just tell me about them. Right? Tell me about them. It creates a bond and a connection around the one thing that most of the world doesn't allow your employee to speak about anymore. And so enabling our leaders to be able to do that, to lean in, to have a framework for that, is a really important people strategy that's been undervalued for too long. And we have a generation that's prioritizing wellness and balance and holistic care. And care during loss, transition, and grief is a critical component of that. And one thing I certainly want to add to this is, and should be structured into jobs where loss is common, where traumatic events are common, where crises is common, police officers, healthcare clinicians, places where you see loss often, should make intentional space for leaders to be competent in engaging in discussion around that loss. It's an imperative.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I think that most of us are not equipped with tools around how to handle this. That's why so many people avoid just raising this, because we don't know how to approach it. And you said just saying the name, asking about them, acknowledging that that's probably not going to be the same without them, asking what they need. That makes a hell lot of a difference for someone.
It really does. And even when there's a death in the workplace, an employee has died unexpectedly, typical framework is we call EAP or counseling service, and they come in for the day and do listening sessions.
Yeah.
And there's no framework for 2 weeks later and 3 weeks. How do you memorialize that person? How does that person's memory become a part of the department, the organization? That's really important work for the people who are left behind. And leaders need to understand that and have a way to work through it.
Definitely. Kelly, do you have anything you want to share with people who are dealing with grief? And as we mentioned, like, we are walking through it. It's not something that goes away. We take it with us everywhere we go, and especially when you lose a loved one for the rest of our life. What's your take on how do you live with it?
Yeah, I think what I learned through the loss of Darius is that it really is a journey. And it's a journey that it's a trip you weren't prepared to take, right? You didn't understand all the valleys and the twists and turns on the journey. So you're not prepared. And like anything, if we're out hiking on a journey that we don't have a map to, you have to take care of yourself. You take breaks when you need to. You rest and recover, right? For me, looking around at the beauty that exists, even in rugged terrain, even in a valley, intentionally trying to find moments of beauty and peace and stillness around you. And it's so often rooted in remembering, in stories, in connecting to the love, and taking people on the journey with you. Find your tribe. There are people who you can say, I'm struggling today, and I need to talk about it. Today stinks. Can you just sit with me? There are people who will willingly do that. It may not always be the person you thought that it would be on the journey with you, but find your riders. find the people who will go with you and lean into those relationships. They will matter along the way. Some people will help you when your backpack gets too heavy, and they become your partners on the ride. But self-care is so important, and you do it one day at a time. One meal that you decide to sit at the table for.
Yeah.
One day that you walk outside and pick the mail out of the mailbox. A 10-minute commitment to just go outside and look at the sky and feel the sun on your face. You do it in increments until it can become a more organic habit. But never forget that in all the relationships and all the love that exists, your relationship with yourself and the parts of you that brought you joy and happiness and wholeness before the loss are things that you can reconnect to help you find your way back through the loss.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and there are different kind of days, right? I mean, as you said, it's we have valleys. We don't know to anticipate them a lot of times. And I can share that what helped me a lot was going to a support group. That was really meaningful for me to be able to open up in front of people that experience a similar kind of loss. Obviously, each loss is different, but I think speaking with people who experience something similar was I found some relief there.
That's right. Community is there's so much healing in community. There's so much healing in community because it's a safe space to do exactly what we've been talking about. Say the thing, right? My brother died. He's gone. He all the emotions that you have with it, things that the general population, the general public may not understand, may feel shocked by, right? Sometimes you can have anger immediately at the person who's died, confusion, and those emotions and how they show up. It's safe to talk about in a group who really aligns with it and understands. And so it's a great point. Community matters. And I could not have done it without a grief counselor. Could not have done it. Safe space to go in the room, shut the door, cry, scream. Why? Was someone who wasn't trying to fix me, who didn't say it's okay, who said, this is exactly what you should be doing right now. Exactly this. That emotion, let it out. It's a healthy part of the grieving process. So if we spend the next hour crying, then crying's what you needed today. In priceless for me on this journey.
Yeah, I think that just letting emotions is a very important part of the process. And what's really annoying, as you said, like people saying to you, oh, it will be okay, you will move on, time will heal. That's not helpful.
That's right. It's minimizing.
Yeah, and usually it's irritating. It's sometimes even makes you angry.
Yeah.
So just
it's minimizing. It really is. That's the regulation, right?
Yeah.
Don't minimize my pain to make you feel better. What you say is, I can't imagine what that feels like, but I know that you're hurting. Valid.
Yeah. Yeah, and crying, we need to be, as society, more comfortable with that, regardless of the reason. People cry. I mean, it's part of life. It's natural. we need to allow that
Yes,
and feel more comfortable with that.
that's right. Emotions are a part of the living. It's a universal human experience. Language, country, gender, sex, none of those things matter, right? We laugh in every language. We cry in every language too,
Yeah.
right? Um, and the freedom to be able to do that without judgment, without scrutiny, and more importantly, without being shut down, right? Oh, no, 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 no. You're fine, you're okay. I'm not fine. I hope to be. But right now, I really just need a hug. I don't need an advisor at this moment. It's difficult to fix what you didn't create, right? So bringing back your brother, bringing back my son's not really within. I haven't met the man that can do that yet.
No.
But holding me through it, invaluable.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm connecting that to also what we started with, like loss is not just losing someone. Obviously, that's part of it, but even people who lost their job, and just today, like a big company here announced massive layoffs. And it's like when someone lost a job, it can be very difficult, and usually what they need is not someone to tell them, oh, I connect you with XYZ, oh, I'll help you find, because they may not need that right now. As you said, they may need a hug. They may need someone to talk to, an outlet to share their emotions, their feeling. That's what they may need from you, not just to connect them with another person or to help them find the next job. Maybe that's what they need, but usually not immediately after
That's right.
finding they lost the job.
That comes over time, right? What they need to hear is, I'm so sorry that happened. I know you loved that place, right? I know how much you poured into that role. I'm sorry that happened to you. But these conversations matter, right? The more we talk about it, the more people lean in and understand that how I show up matters. And I can change the way that I recognize the loss of someone. I have a colleague that lost a parent yesterday. I sent her a text yesterday. I'll send her one today. I'll send her one through the journey because I know what it means, and I won't be the one to drop off. That won't be me. It won't be me. I'll continue to show up, and I hope that we can encourage someone else to say, you don't have to send elaborate floral mixes every week to someone. Just a simple, I'm so sorry. I know this is tough. If you ever need to talk, I will be here. On repeat, right? Everyone's saying that in the first week. Everyone's saying that. Less people are saying it by week 4. And grief intensifies between months 3 to 6. How many times have we still been there for someone months 3 to 6? You be the one who's still there.
Yeah, those are beautiful words. And before we end, kind of wanted to ask you, what's your message to the people that listen to us today? How do you want to end the conversation?
For those who are grieving and still managing through a loss, I think my grief counselor used to end every session by saying, take good care. And 2 weeks into loss, I felt like that was falling on deaf ears. And 3.5 years later, it's the best advice she could have given me. Because over time, I had to develop my own personal strategies to make sure that I distanced myself from things and people that made what was healing to me, which is story and memory and talking about my son, from me. And so if that's not a safe space for me to be, if talking about him is a place that I can't freely heal and do joy, then I've had to pocket that away from my life. And doing that has allowed me to reconnect with what my joy, my happiness, to find new purpose and meaning making. And so whatever it means for you taking good care, if that is time in nature, if that is rest and relaxation, meaningful time and building new memories with the friends and loved ones that you still have, finding a way to prioritize that will help you with the journey of recovery. Be patient and be good to yourself. And to those who love someone who's lost, particularly if significant loss is not something that you've experienced, be patient. Allow them the time, and just be there. Presence is just there. It's just answering the phone call that comes in on a Saturday that says, I just need to talk. It's just showing up and being there. It's just a text that said, Thanksgiving will be hard this year. I'm thinking of you. It is intentionally finding ways to say, I am here. You are not alone. That's it. That's it. It's a whole recipe.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you so much for being so open and candid, and it's been a wonderful conversation. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, you too. We've lived this journey. We've both lived the same journey. So when you know, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what can I wish you? Having a blessed day and continue with the important work that you are doing.
Yeah. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to show up for people when they need it most.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.